Hey, are you talking about back in the day?
Nah, man. I'm talking about back in the day.
Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day.
Joining me today on the Back in the Day podcast is author Jon Finkel. What's up, Jon?
How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for coming on, man. I'm excited about this. I will be honest with you. Most of the time, most of my guests I've either interacted with before. I either know them in some capacity, interacted with before, or worked with before. So I'm super excited to have you on. I think we have a mutual buddy, Scott Bedgood. And he was like, dude, I got someone that would be perfect for your show. Sent me your information. And then I was looking through it and I was like, dang, I got to have this guy on. I think what caught my eye first was your book, 1996.
Thank you.
If you could kind of just go into that a little bit in detail for the listeners about what that book is about, what the inspiration was, all that good stuff.
Yeah, 96 is probably the first book that is a biography of a year, a sports year in particular. So that is the year I graduated high school. And, it's just, I had always wanted to write a book about that time period, specifically that year, because it's just this kind of cosmic, in the sports universe anyway, this cosmic year where everything that happened before that it could kind of be thrown into like the 80s, 70s, and 60s era.
Okay.
And everything after that is like things that now all the athletes now and guys that are my age and older now refer to. But before that, these people were not involved, or these leagues were not involved in the conversation. And like some specific examples, if you think in 1995, when I was like a junior in high school, nobody was talking about like the following people, right? Kobe Bryant, who you can't talk about basketball without him. Allen Iverson, again, you can't talk about the NBA or basketball culture without him. Tiger Woods was not in the PGA Tour yet. You can't talk about sports or golf or anything without Tiger Woods. There was no WNBA. It started in 96. There was no MLS. It started in 96. Like when you start looking at the things that before and after, in 95, no one heard of The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they both came out in 96. Like when you start kind of looking at all the conversations of everything since then, all those things have been included in, and you can't talk about their sport or their field without them. But they didn't exist in a conversational or in the sports cultural standpoint. I mean, they were people, obviously. And if you followed amateur golf, you knew. And we kind of knew Iverson a little bit about Georgetown the year before, but even 96 was the year he had the breakout tournament in Georgetown. And so when you look at it that way, it's like all these things that became cultural touchstones and icons and heroes to this next generation, it all was that one year. They weren't in the conversation in 95.
Yeah. So 96 for me was, the first part of it was fourth grade.
Okay.
And the second part was fifth grade. But I will tell you this, in my mind, when I heard that, I was like, 96, huge sports year for my fandom. Okay. So starts off, Cowboys win in January of 96. Cowboys win their probably last Super Bowl ever.
Yeah.
Right. So that's happened. I'm a Dallas kid, so that's a huge thing. I'm also obsessed with Jordan. So that's your 72 and 10 Chicago Bulls, first part of the second three-peat. I'm also a massive Rangers fan. That's the first year they ever make the playoffs in their organization's history. They lose the Yankees 3-1 in the first round, I think.
Yeah.
Juan Gonzalez was the only person getting any type of offense for them. So yeah, 1996, a good freaking year for sports.
You get the Cowboys, who all those Cowboys, like, yes, they were the triplets and all that then, but like they're all still like Dion is at the top of sports still in terms of cultural mindset. Troy still Monday night, like Michael Irvin. These guys didn't go anywhere. Like they've been literally in our TV screens for football for 30 something years after like their playing days. And that was their pinnacle. If you look at, like you said, with Jordan, but it was the last year that like when I followed Shaq and Penny, it was like the Magic, like they were cool. They were young.
Yeah.
Like, Then Shaq goes to the Lakers, and all that happens. And now his legacy is very much obviously firstly tied and associated with the Lakers from a basketball perspective. You know, the Yankees, Derek Jeter's a rookie, and like the Braves are at the middle of where they're pretty good. Like they're going to be going to a bunch of World Series, Glavine and Small. So it's just one of those years. Tyson comes back from jail and has the fight with Holyfield and all these things as they're coming through. And so when you look at sometimes, like I said, it's the sports cosmic universe, you just end up with these time periods where it's like a line of demarcation, and the sports arguments and discussions and everything that were happening in 95 completely don't apply by the end of 96 and really by even 2000, because now you're just, all these guys are stars and the leagues exist and all these things are happening.
Yeah, and would you say too, like I feel like 96 is kind of the start of the steroid era a little bit in Major League Baseball. I mean, it's not, I think you get your pinnacle like in 98. That's when like the home run records are being broken. But that's when it's starting because they're only a year removed from the strike.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. One of the chapters in the book is actually on Ken Griffey Jr., who I actually named my project after 96. It's called Generation Griffey. After him, I think he's the quintessential icon for the whole 90s decade, because not only does he's like he's second to Jordan in terms of just cultural cachet for like teen, middle school, high school, college dudes. Like I'm still wearing my hat backwards like right now because of Ken Griffey Jr. when I was in middle school, right? And so like the swing, the charisma, the way he played, the athleticism in the outfield, the smiles, the big home runs, and exactly to your point, like he was the face of baseball before all of that. And he didn't leave the Mariners till 99, and 2000 was his first year with the Reds, but he very much wasn't sort of king of baseball by 98, 99, because unlikable, surly Barry Bonds is now hitting a bazillion home runs. Sosa, who was just like so hard to root for outside of Chicago, even when he was at his heyday, is now hitting 60, 70 home runs. McGwire, who, hit a 49 home runs his rookie year, but was skinny and lanky, is now all of a sudden this like overgrown freak who also, looking back, they're not likable, charismatic guys. They're kind of jerks.
You didn't like Sosa?
What's that?
You didn't like Sosa?
I thought it was such a phony. I mean, I collected baseball cards, right? So I knew, like, I had his rookie and second and third year cards where he weighed like 190 pounds. It was just, and I've always worked out and followed this stuff, and he just seemed, McGwire to me felt like, okay, again, forget the andro and all that. He had the frame. He's a big dude. I always kind of in the time gave him, of all those three, the benefit of the doubt, because he's bigger and taller and stronger. I always felt like if a guy like that did dedicate themselves to the weight room without steroids, they kind of could look like that. Bodybuilders had done it. NFL players had done it. So I honestly gave him a pass. But like Luis Gonzalez and Sosa, these guys who came up hitting nothing, and all of a sudden were 80 pounds heavier with these big heads and big arms. And that's why I love Griffey so much. Like, he didn't do it. If Griffey had done it, he'd have like 85 home runs. I mean, he had the best swing of all time. So
yeah, it would have been pretty unstoppable.
I get mad at those guys because I think what they really did was screw with Griffey's King of the Hill legacy.
I gotcha.
By cheating, basically.
Yeah. So, okay, take me through the idea when you started with like, okay, I'm going to write a biography about a year. Was part of that because obviously your senior year of high school, that's a memorable year for just about everybody.
Yeah.
So did it kind of start there where it was like, I have all these awesome memories from 1996, and then you started doing more research, and then that's when you started realizing like the tie-in of the Kobe, the Tiger Woods, and the stuff that you were talking about?
Yeah. So I've done, that was like, I think my 7th or 8th book. I'd done a lot of biographies. I did autobiographies. I did Mean Joe Green's book and Charlie Ward's book. And I did a massive like biography / history of the Seattle Supersonics with Kevin Durant and all these guys. So I'm used to writing larger scale books on a whole life or things like that. So what I did was I treated the year like a person, as if I was just digging. And so I just kind of went back with some newspaper references and old Sports Illustrateds of like, what was going on there? And it was very early on because the book is in chronological order. And it's like, okay, so I started off with like, obviously the college football championship games, and you've got, Florida State, just, there was a time when there was, forget Alabama and all these other, Georgia, like it was Florida State for like the entire middle of the decade. Those were 1-2. Nebraska was in there too. But basically the championship ran through Gainesville or Tallahassee for like 7 years. Whoever won that was probably going to be, there was no championship game, but like probably going to be 1 or 2 for the rest of the year because they were both likely undefeated whenever they played. And then if you go through, the Cowboys are next in the Super Bowl. And then it was pretty early on where I was like, oh, wow, Tiger debuted like in March. And then it's like, well, that draft is obviously, not only just Kobe and not only Iverson, but
KG,
Ray Allen and all these other guys who were huge. Slam Magazine has a whole feature on that. That is like maybe the greatest draft class of all time. And then as I kept going through the year, then I realized, to your point, that all right, all these guys and all these things kept happening. Like, okay, WNBA was announced to tie in with the Olympics, and MLS had their first game, and then you kind of keep going through, and then you realize, Shaq got traded, and actually in the beginning of the year, one of the biggest stories, which is like lost, is Magic Johnson, after his HIV comeback, came back in '96 for like the last half of the NBA season.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was huge, and like so, all these things sort of happened. And it supported. I have a section on movies, which is cool. Like the big, there was no Happy Gilmore. Like Happy Gilmore came out, and Jerry Maguire, like these sports movies that you can't really talk about sports movies without bringing up Jerry Maguire. The golf, you got Tiger Woods. I mean, you got Happy Gilmore. Tiger's going to be in Happy too. So yeah, you just start researching, and yeah, if the theory didn't hold true, if Kobe came in '98 and Iverson came in '94 and Tiger came in 2000, like it probably would have not really had much to tie it together. But it just so happened that it did.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing because it was already a crazy year in sports,
yeah,
right? And then you add in all those different layers. It makes for a really good. I mean, it makes for a biography. It makes for a story, right?
Yeah.
So you crushed it on that.
Thanks.
So okay, take me back to growing up. Were you involved with a lot of sports? Were you what were you like growing up?
I grew up in Boston mostly, so diehard Red Sox fan. Celtics fan. Patriots were miserable, like all the way back to how we are now. So we went to a lot of games, but it was the old Foxborough Stadium with the old aluminum seats. It was not like the nice Gillette they have now. It was a miserable experience. It was always cold. We were always losing. We always had new quarterbacks that were terrible. And they were bad. I think the years my dad got season tickets, they were like back then 2-14, 4-12. They were just awful. Random dudes rolling in at quarterback and not a fun time. But yeah, I grew up, I was very athletic. Swimming was by far my best sport, but I played Little League and I played soccer and played all that. I played football in high school. We moved through high school. I moved to New Jersey when I started high school. So I went after that. I was, kind of grew up 96, but we moved to high school in 92. I think we moved there. So for those 4 years and beyond, my family lived in New Jersey. So yeah, I think I was, when you look at that era of, I don't like to use like normal or regular, but like you're pretty typical dude into sports guy.
Yeah.
Baseball cards, video games, like watching, any Terminator 2, like all those movies. I was a little older than you, but GoldenEye and NHL 94 and Madden and all that. And so like that kind of guy.
Did you continue to be a Boston sports fan? Like, are you still? Is that still?
Yeah,
still your teams?
Yeah. I never left it. We moved a lot. At one point, I was in 4 schools in 5 years until actually we got to Massachusetts for 5 years and moved to New Jersey. And so yeah, all my new friends that I'd met back when I moved to New Jersey were all Yankees fans, which was just miserable because again, throughout the time I lived there, it was still the curse. And other than Nomar and Mo Vaughn, and we just didn't have any bright spots. While I lived there, the Yankees were going through all these World Series wins, and it really, really sucked.
Yeah, because '96 is the start of their three-peat.
Yeah,
that's like the
Jeter
start of them coming back.
Sudden, yeah, Jeter and Bernie Williams and Posada. I hated all those guys. And the only time it was really convenient to go see the Red Sox was the old Yankee Stadium. So we would all take the train in, and eventually I stopped wearing my Red Sox stuff because I would just get beat up. We used to keep tickets in the bleachers and I get my hat stolen. I mean, I remember how many times I would go a hat and I would sit there and, in the bleachers, dudes are drunk and I'm in high school and someone would just take it off and throw it and just keep throwing it, like, oh, it's all the way out of the stadium. And so just for self-preservation and enjoying the game, I wouldn't obviously ever wear Yankee crap, but I would put on, I just put on like a regular blue shirt just to avoid the fights.
So take me to 2004 Red Sox breaking the curse.
Yeah.
as a fan, as a lifelong fan, and going through all of that crap, was it more exciting for them to come back 3-0 and win the ALCS than it was the actual World Series?
Dude, I was just having this conversation last night with my brother after the Indians came back when Big Christmas hit that home run last night, and then they ended up winning in extra innings. You know, because of what's happened with the Red Sox, like I definitely don't follow it. At that time, let me just paint the picture. Like at that time in my life, I was living in LA, so the time zone was definitely in my favor, and I would bet. You know, I worked from home. Before people worked from home. I was a magazine writer, so I traveled a lot. So I was able to actually be home a lot. So I was on staff at Men's Fitness, and I traveled for a lot of stories. But when I wasn't traveling, the office was pretty far away up in LA, so I would be able to be home. And so I probably was watching 150 to 155 full Sox games. They started at 4:00 out west. I knew the lineups, the tendencies, everything you could know about a Red Sox team from probably 97, 98 to like 05 to 07. After they won 07, I kind of took my foot off the gas a little bit. And it really does. It honestly, I think any fan who's gone through like a long period of not winning and then you win and maybe that team breaks up, you do have to relax. You cannot hold on to every win and loss in freaking July like you were when you weren't winning. And so after the 03 Aaron Boone home run, I was actually visiting. I live in Florida now, but I was visiting my dad for that series. I just happened to extend my trip as it went on. And I will never forget after that game was over, I walked because I thought that was the year. That just felt like our year. 03 did, I'm talking about. And when I remember I walked out back, they live on a lake, like a little Florida type lake. And I took off, I had a Red Sox hat on and I just chucked it in the lake. And I was like, this is not fun. Like I've lost. I remember they're not, I had reached the point that I think my dad had reached in 86 and some other people.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just investing. I was like, in my head, I'm like 160 games, 3 hours a game. That's like 500 hours. Like, this is just not, there's no reason to do this to myself.
You were where I am at right now with the Cowboys. Like, I'm just like, it is what it is. Like, just please don't, I watch it, but I'm like, why am I watching this?
Now it's 18 games, but like, at least it's just a Sunday. Like baseball. And I was just saying this to a different friend of mine, who's my diehard Yankee fan, from one of my friends when I moved into to New York, New Jersey. Like, you live with it. If you do follow it, you live with it every day. You really can't not live with it, because as soon as you take off a week or 2 weeks, whatever, like you're just out of the rotation in terms of like, oh, he's starting, or they called him up, or I didn't realize he was in a slump. Like, if you do watch it every day, and again, I'm a dad, I'm a father now, I coach. I don't think I watched 5 innings of Red Sox baseball this year. I'm like the typical lost fan, and I have just so many of us who grew up in my age who up till the middle of 2000s, you could say like whatever their team was, they were all in on everything.
Absolutely.
And now like entire seasons go by, and I'm like literally just now I just started watching the playoffs because I still like watching the last couple of innings of playoff baseball. I'm like, Verdugo's on the Yankees. Like, when I don't even know when that happened. Like I don't follow it anymore. But that isn't to say that at the time I was all in. And so to go to 04. It was like the greatest. I didn't have kids yet. I wasn't married yet. It was very easily the greatest moment of my life. And the 3 or 4 days after that, they used to have this Boston Dirt Dogs website. Some anyone older were listening. They used to have a Sons of Sam Horn message board before social media. And it was just everybody reading about like the grandparents and the people who'd gone through 80 years and 90 years. And it was just like joyous, man. And it was such a great team. It's probably, other than them winning, when the Celtics won in 08 with Pierce like rolling through all of his stuff personally, like that felt really important. Brady's came out of nowhere. I can't say that when he won his first one, it was so surprising and surreal. It was like, wait, what? We just beat the Rams. But then this recent one this year was the only one with the Celtics, because we've been following Tatum and we've been following Jalen, and they've had, I won't even say failure, because they've been amazing. But when your team has to come up short a bunch.
Yep.
Really get what it feels like when you win. And if the Cowboys ever do it, will have a perfect feeling, because they always come up short in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, dude, that's how. Okay, so I like taking it back, like you're saying, this year for the Celtics, it's like they came up short. They came up short. Obviously, the Red Sox coming up short for so many years. I mean, almost 100 years. But that's how it was to me. Okay, so obviously the Rangers win the World Series last year.
Yeah.
But in a way, dude, it felt almost better when we beat the Yankees in the 2010 ALCS than the World Series did last year. Just because, like, I mean, it was awesome. I teared up and stuff when they won, but it wasn't the same feeling because all of our guys weren't like homegrown guys.
Yeah.
A lot of our studs were people that had been there for a year, maybe 2 years.
That's what matters. The first question you asked about, like, the 04 team, like, the beauty of all of this was obviously the comeback against the Yankees. But what mattered so much, and I think I really believe it's part of the reason why guys like me have just kind of drifted. And again, they had plenty of free agency. It wasn't all that. But like those teams, when you think about right now, it's like, okay, you have like, you know, you can just go run off Millar and Manny and Ortiz and Pedro and Schilling, right? And you go through and it's like Mark Bellhorn, like you go Trot Nixon, like you have these stalwart 6-7 dudes on offense. You know, Derek Lowe, you got your 4 or 5 pitchers. The closers will always typically change. We had Keith Folk and then Papelbon for a while. You have these guys who are those, you know, Johnny Damon, like your guys. And then when you're doing that against the Yankees team year after year, who has their same version with Jeter and Posada and Tony Miller and, you know, Paul O'Neill. I hate all these guys, but you have them all there. And when they keep facing off and you finally break through, absolutely, like in terms of the specific win, it's hard to say because if we had lost to St. Louis, like it would have probably been like, oh my God. But in the moment, even when they put in Pedro for no real freaking reason in Game 7, and we're all like, oh my God, like he's still Pedro, but like, is he Pedro? Like, what are we doing here? Like, don't put this on him. It was just the greatest. I remember I lived in LA. There was a bar called Fat Face something Fenders. It was a Red Sox bar near where we lived at the beach. And my brother and I just kind of went over there, and it was just a bunch of like, not a bunch, like hundreds of just glassy-eyed Boston transplants just hugging each other like for hours. It was just everybody's cheers, drinking beers, and it was just amazing. And after the World Series, it wasn't actually. It was we went back again. It was,
but
different.
it wasn't that same
cool,
feeling.
But it wasn't that like we beat the Yankees. It was like, and it was also that was kind of a boring. Like we just
dominated.
We were not losing that. We weren't losing that.
Yeah. And it's because you beat the Yankees too, and how they came back. Oh my gosh, down 3-0, first time team to ever do
I
that.
get the chill, and you know, part of it too is the guys like you mentioned. If you have that attachment, again, Pedro wasn't homegrown, but like we had him since '99 when he was like epic, or '98, and like we had seen brilliance out of him, and then we picked up Schilling, and like you know, forget all his where he is now in lore. At the time, he was a horse, man. Like. You wanted Schilling on your team. I don't care what anybody says with his goofy personality and opinions on whatever. This guy was a gamer. He was an absolute gamer. And it was like what Millar said. We always thought that. Even in the regular season, it's like, well, we might lose a couple, but like we're always going to win 2 out of the 3 of the Pedro, Schilling, Derek Lowe trifecta all year long, you know?
Yeah, you got the bloody sock. You got all this stuff. I mean, it was a cool. I remember – that was my freshman year of college. So I just remember in the dorm rooms watching all of those games, like in our little commons area, and then keep coming back, keep winning. And it was a
fun team too. Like even that's why I've kind of been pushing. Like I don't even at all pretend to like have watched any baseball this year really till the playoffs. But I like the Indians team. They just have that all the teams that have that 03, 04 Red Sox feel, the scrappy guys with a personality, kind of some goofballs, kind of some aloof guys, but they're all playing together. I've enjoyed them a lot. Obviously playing, you know, I just want the Yankees to lose all the time, but like it's just there's still the same feel. Like I know how the Indians feel like right now. It's like, oh, Stanton, oh, Judd, like, oh wow, like of course your guys making $1 billion come through. Like we need this call up pinch hitter to hit a home run. And like, you know what I mean? Like I love, I've been rooting for the Indians as my like stand-in with the Red Sox being terrible.
Yeah. No, that definitely makes it fun. I mean, when the Mavs finally got over the hump in 2011, especially because they beat the Heat after they collapsed against the Heat 5 years
like
before
with Dirk,
that.
Like your guy, like that,
absolutely.
That matters a lot.
Yeah, because like the Mavericks run this year was a lot of fun, and it kind of came out of left field. You know, I mean, I remember going into the playoffs, me and a couple of buddies were talking, and I was like, look, I think the Mavs can go on a little run. I don't think they're going to go like win the whole thing. I was like, but I think they can go on a little run just because they've got like, they're better than people think. They've been one since the trade deadline, and they They got Gafford and stuff. They're one of the better teams. Now, did I expect them to go to the finals? Absolutely not. But even if they would have won this year, oh, they weren't beating that Celtics team. But
I remember I even texted our friend Scott, like, there was no chance. Like, I didn't, like, anyone who was like these idiots, Kendrick Perkins, some of these guys were picking them up. And I do still watch every Celtics game, so I haven't like fallen out. It's just baseball I've kind of dropped off. But like, it just made no sense to me. This was top. We had 5 of this, other than Luka, and I think Kyrie is of all 10 guys starting, we had 5 of the best. Put Luka maybe wherever you want, one of those two.
Yeah,
but we had the other 4. We had everybody else. Kyrie would not have started on this Celtics team.
it wasn't even fair.
It wasn't even fair. It wasn't going to be close. And we had one meltdown or whatever. I will never put money. I mean, obviously Kyrie hit that clutch shot with Cleveland, but like, this version of Kyrie is not winning a championship. I know you guys have picked up Clay and some other stuff, but like,
yeah, but they're not going to beat the Celtics.
Yeah,
they're not going to beat that Celtics team is just so dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll see what happens. But when Luka finally does win his championship, if it's with the Mavericks, it's going to feel amazing because of what happened, this year.
I think you have to do that journey. It probably won't be with Kyrie on the team. I just think what happened last year with him is that's the year that he didn't go nuts, and now you're going to have the year he goes.
We'll see what happens with him. Okay, so after high school, where did you go to school at? Where did your journey take you after that?
I went to James Madison in Virginia for college, and had a good time there. I realized pretty early on that I had a great time. I met all my friends I'm still friends with, but like, definitely not the school I should have gone to for what I wanted to do. And part of it was, all of it's my responsibility because I didn't care and pay attention to what like I should do with my life till I was probably 24. But like, I knew I kind of wanted. It was there that I realized very early on, sitting in like an econ class with like a business major, like, why did I even put a single moment's thought into what I want to do with my life? Like, what am I even doing in this school at this class? And then once I remember the day I was sitting in like a macro or microeconomics, and I was like, I hate every part of this. I don't even know what I'm going to do. I walked down to the guidance counselor, like the second week of school. And I'm like, how do I transfer? And they're like, oh, like with what? And I'm like classes. I'm like, no, like out. Like, this is, I want to write. Like, I want to be in media. I think like there's nothing here in Harrisonburg. She's like, well, did you look at the school? Like, I don't understand what you want me to do. And I was like, well, how can I get into at least media here? And so that's what I did. And I ended up staying there and had a good time. But,
where did the desire to do writing come from? Is that something that you were kind of like, were you just growing up in high school and stuff?
I read a ton. I was like a dork. Like, I played sports and everything, but I also was probably the only one of my friends who read regularly several books, at a time, a couple books a week. If I would be very content to, read at night, turn off the TV and read at night. I read all the time, magazines cover to cover, not just Sports Illustrated, but, some of the back then when magazines mattered. And so I realized I just wanted to write. I started writing, definitely didn't really write in high school, but that first year I came home from college, I got an internship at a newspaper just because it felt like that's kind of something I might want to do, just by going in the old yellow pages, which calling up newspapers and seeing if they need an internship. So I used to work construction like all day, and then because newspapers, when they printed, still had printing and stuff at night. So I was about like 3:30 or whatever, I would go in there and work, intern for 3 or 4 hours and edit stories and write some stories and do that. And I really liked it. So I think for me, it was a love of books and a love of great writing that made me want to be a writer. And, if you don't like business, finance, whatever, there's sales and all these kind of things. Like, you better be creative and figure out a way to live, or you're just going to be stuck miserable all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that. You're preaching to the choir right now. So okay. So you move on from James Madison, you're getting the internships. What was after that?
I realized in the middle of college there that I wanted to like get into bigger media. I thought I wanted to write movies, work in TV, write for big media companies, magazines, national magazines. I really, ego, whatever you want to call it. Like, I did not want to write for some small town paper. I didn't want to work for some local news place. Like, I wanted to write for, Men's Health. I wanted to write for GQ. I wanted to work for the magazines, the places that I was consuming. I wanted to work for them. And you really can't do it. Well, now you could with the internet the way it is and social media the way it is. But back then you had to be where these things were. So my choices were basically New York, which all my friends moved to, and my parents lived up there still, and it probably would have been the easier choice, or LA. And I just I'd always wanted to live in LA with movies. I really thought I wanted to work in movies and in TV. And so I took a job that summer just with my high school football coach, loading trucks basically, and delivering wine in New York City. We only lived about a half hour away until I saved up. I can't remember the amount. I've changed it over the years in my stories because I don't remember. It was either 7,500 or 12,500. Some amount.
Yeah.
In my brain was enough to make me give me 3 months to live in LA. I had a place to stay. A friend of friend of my father's son had done what I did a year before. So I had a couch to crash on, like everybody who moves out there. Whatever the number was in my head, I'd saved that. And literally it was like, I left that next week. Like, I'm going on my adventure. And I stayed there for 9 years.
Yeah. And just started doing different things
I worked
there.
for Comedy Central. I was an intern first. And then I talked my way onto the set of the Man Show. And then I became a PA for Comedy Central for a couple of years, and then associate producer for a year. But while I was doing that, I was submitting magazines left and right. And then once I finally got enough articles in Men's Fitness was my big breakthrough. I started doing cover stories. I was able to transition over to more magazines, staff jobs, and then books.
How did you like the PA work? Because
it's the worst work in the world. I mean, not in the world. I shouldn't say that.
In that industry, right?
In that industry. I worked construction. I was a roofer for a summer. That's actually really.
Yeah, that's actually the work that's
brutal. You're on a roof. It's hot. The roof is hot. You have your knee pads on, your nail gun. I mean, that's hard labor. So I will remove hard labor from a white collar blue job.
From the creative space.
It's the worst. All you do. It's like I used to joke, you're just like a circus monkey. They just
100%.
You just have to sweep the floor and get the fruit and get the coffee and pick up lunch, and it's very debilitating. The only good part was I kind of I'm a sports guy. I played basketball. I got into the pickup game with the writers because I was athletic. I worked out at one of the gyms with some of the guys, so I had a little bit more of an edge. That wasn't some a lot of the people in these jobs, especially in LA, are real film nerds. They just are. They're kind of introverts, or they're just so snobby and elitist about their opinions on prestige TV, and they're insufferable. Frankly, they're kind of really nerdy and insufferable. And this was a Man Show, by the way, Comedy Central, so it was a different kind of person there. But I ended up getting to hang out with a lot of the writers who to this day, I've been on their stuff talking about. It's really cool. Cousin Sal. Endorsed Macho Man, my book that just came out, and Dave Damashek I've been on to talk about Mean Joe Green because he's a Pittsburgh guy, his show on NFL Network. So we were all, they're older than me, 5 years or 7 years, but we were in a writer's room at Kimmel in 2001, and it's pretty cool that later on happened.
I've been on enough commercial sets or television sets to see PAs just get, I mean, gosh, dressed down. I always felt so terrible. You're on the set and you're like, well, I'm not a big deal. Yeah, I'm an actor on this show or whatever, or commercial, but no one here knows me. And the way you're getting talked to, I just feel really bad. Can I hug you?
Yeah. My two saving graces were I have very thick skin. I was none of it really bothered me personally. So I guess that was my first. So 3. The second one was I was able to get in with the writers. So the guys I was dealing with, at least they let me pitch stuff, and nothing really got on, but I let it be known that that's what I wanted to do. And that really helped me out. And the other thing that played against was I'm pretty strong. And so anything that had to be lifted or carried or built, I would just end up spending days with the shop guys, building sets and ridiculous amounts of manual labor. We're gonna because they put on it was 2 live show tapings at a time. They'd have to move the set around and do stuff, and it'd just be Finkel will lift that and carry that, and I'm this is it's almost like doing construction again for the most part. And then
you kind of turned into this like a floater, you were just doing whatever.
On the PA, I'd have my earpiece in, the headset you have on, and it'd be Finkel, the Studio 6, and I'd go and I'd be they need someone to load the water into the fridge. That's awesome.
That's cool, man. Have you ever thought about maybe, I mean, now you're extremely established as an author, but is there any part of you that's man, I kind of wouldn't mind trying to write for television or film or anything?
Film, I've had some discussions about some of the projects I've worked on, and as I move into my next phase of books, definitely is a path that I would like to go back to at some point in time. TV, possibly. I mean, I think I have friends that still live out there that run TV shows and work in TV shows. I don't know if I think you have to live out there for the most part now. I would never live there again. The traffic and taxes are not my friends, and I
Yeah.
would never ever go back there for that. But I would go back to work for a while and help out on some things, but I wouldn't move my family over there.
No, it's not. It's not really a family spot,
No,
right?
no. When I lived there, it was the perfect time to live there. I was single. I lived a block from the water. I didn't have to drive anywhere. It was perfect. But yeah, I think movies would be a lot of fun. I would never be against like TV, but I'm not like putting spec scripts or anything like that together. At the time, the Man Show was a skit show, and so then he was moved. Jimmy was, Adam would just start his podcast, which no one even knew what like podcasts were, and then Jimmy obviously went on to start Jimmy Kimmel Live. And at the very beginning, it was kind of raucous. It wasn't like the political type thing now. It was like Snoop Dogg and drinking, and it was actually like a fun show. And so that seemed like something I wanted to do. But again, like, I don't know if it was ego. It probably was. Like, I didn't love the idea of just all my work being said by somebody else. Like, I liked my byline. I liked seeing my name in these magazines. And by the time those things were happening, I had already had a few big, for me anyway, at the time, pieces come out like of note in some of the magazines that I wanted to write for. And I was just like, this is way cooler to be like, every month I can go to Barnes Noble, or my friends are reading Men's Health and my name's in there because I wrote this piece on this athlete or whatever, versus, having some actor or whatever say my words. Now, of course, the trade-off is the TV guy's probably making 50 times what I was making back when I was writing for magazines. But I was 23. I wasn't really just thinking about one specific thing. I was just wanting to do what I enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. And it led you to the path that you're at now, right? Where it's, kind of, I mean, I'm sure you have people that you have to answer to, but at the same time, it's you creating
No, I have no one I
your
have to
stuff.
answer to, actually.
No one?
No, I've removed the people I have to answer to.
Really? That's awesome.
When you build, consulting and ghostwriting, and I'm knock on wood lucky enough to be able to kind of pick my projects and clients. And you have to listen once you sign a contract to do a book or whatever. There's people you listen to, but I actively signed on to that.
Gotcha.
So I chose my poison, as opposed to, for many, many years, it's like I go to work and there's this person and there's this job and there's the rules and all that. So it took a while. I mean, Scott will tell you, it takes a while to transition and do all these things. But ultimately, when you get to that point, you're like, how did I not do it this way?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, name of the show is called Back in the Day, right? So where I focus on each season, I focus on a different topic that I ask each one of my guests to tell a story from back in their day. This season, I'm specifically talking about a story from back in your day when you felt like you made your parents the proudest growing up. Do you have one for me?
Yeah, you had asked that. I was thinking of a bunch of different ones, but this one popped in my head. I don't really know why. Maybe it's because I swim a lot. I'm at the pool a lot. But I had I was swimming last night at like my practice, and I was trying to think about some that I could maybe share. This one I think was a good one because I remember it was just when I it was after this thing happened. I had a conversation with my dad, and I was like, all right, like, I'm a person. Like, I'm not just like an idiot, And I was lifeguarding. I used to lifeguard at this lake in New Jersey every summer. Like, it was a great job. Me and a bunch of my high school buddies, some girls we were friends with, lifeguarding, bathing suits all day. When you're not on the deck, you're playing wiffle ball on the side with the kids who go to the pool there, free snack bar stuff, like making money, teaching swim lessons. Like, it doesn't get better when you're like 20, 21 years old. And one day I was on the stand and I got a radio call that my brother, who's 4 years younger, was at a basketball camp at the high school, maybe a mile or two away. And he had just, somebody had just driven him there. Like, your brother's here and he's hurt. Like, you got to get off the stand. So somebody came like running around the lake. It was a pretty good sized lake. Like, I jump off and I'm on, I'm like, I'll swim across, like, so much faster. Right. So I swim across and I come out of the water.
Swim across the entire lake?
It wasn't like, I'm not painting it like a Great Lakes lake. I mean, it probably was maybe 400 yards. But to me, like, where I was on the stand, I would have had to go, like, again, I'm only bringing it up because I thought about that last night. Like, what I'm at, like, it was definitely was not faster. Like,
that was definitely a teenage man.
Definitely, like, I gotta go, like, shirt off, like, So I maybe it was for being a showman or something. But I came out of the water. My brother was there, and his arm was all messed up. He was kind of crying a little bit. He was freshman or sophomore in high school, and I was a freshman or sophomore in college. One of that, somewhere in that version. And his arm was black and blue and swollen. And I'm like, what happened? And like he fell like in basketball camp, and it definitely looked like he broke his wrist or broke his arm or something. And my dad was on a business trip in Colorado or something, and it just so happened one of those weird days. My mom was like, nobody had cell phones. She just wasn't anywhere you could call. Like they called the house, she wasn't home, and she was a stay-at-home mom. But if you're not home and a stay-at-home mom, like there's nowhere to find you. That's it. Yeah. This is 1997 or 8 or something. I'm sorry, this is probably 97 or 98. And so I was like, all right. So I was like, I'll get in the car. Like I put on a shirt or whatever, but took him to the hospital. I don't know how at the time I remembered our insurance, like where my dad worked, like what we did. They finally, I left a message at home, like, hey mom, again, no cell phones now it's like so silly, but mom, I'm at the hospital with Craig. Like I think he broke his wrist. Here's the number. Like we're in room this, you know what I mean? Like that's it. So we're there, and he's like freaking out. I'm sitting there hanging out with him. Like he has 2 friends with him from the camp too. And they have to re-crack it and set it. All these things have to happen. And I'm with them, and we take care of it. And it isn't until we're like done and the cast, they do that plastic thing. It's wrapped up, it's drying. That there's like over the PA, like a call, because where we were, it wasn't like close to where we lived. It just we were 40 minutes away or whatever.
Close place.
So I pick up the phone, and my mom was just like, "What's going on? Oh my god!" She's freaking out. And by this time, I'm like, "It's done." Like, cast. He's okay now. Like he's laughing. I'm gonna take him to McDonald's and take him home. She was like, "What? I don't understand." Like, I'll come there right now. And I was like, "It's over." Like, what happened?
See you at the house, mom.
Yeah, it's over, mom. Like, there's nothing. Don't worry about it. And she was like, I don't understand. And I'm like, I'll tell you when we get home. Like this happened like 4 hours ago at this point. Like we're all good. I'm literally going to drive him home now. I'll be home in 35, 40 minutes. So we get McDonald's. Obviously, back then it was like, oh, I think I'm at McDonald's like 90% of the time I drove anywhere probably. We get home. My mom's like freaking out. Like, oh my God, let me see the cast. I can't believe it was, she's beating herself up. I'm like, the time it was like so commonplace to not catch people. It's not like I didn't have my phone on me. Like, what are you supposed to do? You were out for the day. Like, you were allowed to be out for the day.
Yeah, your kids are taken care of. Yeah, they were at basketball. The other one was working. Like, what would you?
Exactly. Now, you're a grown woman, and one son's at a high school basketball camp, and your other son's lifeguarding. Why would you even be home? Who knows what she was doing?
Yeah.
And later on that night, like I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, it's good. We're good. Like, I'm a pretty chill guy. I don't get worked up. I didn't get worked up about that. And later on that night, my dad would always, if he was traveling, he'd always call at night, see how we were doing. Again, no cell phones. Like, dad's calling at 8, like let's all be home or whatever.
Yeah.
And he would pick up, and he asked, we talked anyway, very close to my dad. And he was like, hey, I'm really proud of you. And I was like, why? He's like, you handled that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, of course. He's like, no, your brother showed up, hurt. You took him to the hospital. You figured out the insurance. You didn't freeze up or like, you didn't not know what to do. Like you calmed him down. Like you paid, you literally like you paid for like the thing that had to be done there. And you left a message with mom letting him know where you were because he wasn't at camp to be picked up. Like you just thought it out and you handled it. And that's the kind of thing like a person, like I didn't say a person, but like a grown man does.
Yeah.
And I remember like, I was probably like playing NBA Jam, like, okay, whatever. And then like, we hung up and it was maybe a half hour later where I had this like warm, like sense of like, yeah, like I can handle stuff. Like, I did handle that. And like, yeah, I could have freaked out. Like I could have asked an adult to take him, or I could have been like, I don't know what to do. Or I could have been like, I don't know where the hospital is. Or when I got to the hospital, I could have been like, I'm going to wait for my mom. Like, I started thinking of all the things that maybe like a couple of my friends who maybe weren't all together would have done. And that was what popped in my head. And I was probably 21, maybe.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, there was a lot of impressive steps that happened in that. You swam across a lake. That's number one. Right? we're gonna say that the lake was a lot bigger than your. I'm picturing
6 miles, icebergs, through.
Huge lake. Didn't even have to get up for another breath. It was just straight the entire time. And then you didn't freeze under pressure. I mean, I think figuring out your insurance is pretty damn impressive without having any type of card.
I'm assuming at the time I must have had a card in my wallet or something that got me going. There's no way I was like, oh, it's Blue Anthem, blah, blah, that age. But I must have had something in my wallet that like let them know we had it. I remember the conversation answering a bunch of questions. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Yes,
Definitely.
Basically, I got past that level though. Like it was like,
Yeah.
okay, now we can do the thing on your brother. Basically,
Definitely an impressive story, a moment. I can see why your parents would be proud of that. Any stories that maybe you think that growing up that maybe you embarrassed them for something you did?
Yeah,
Okay.
I had a great one. It was also swimming, just because I was thinking about this last night because we were talking today, and I swim on a master's team, so it was kind of to my head. So when I was like 13 or 14, I was what's called like a JO swimmer, like a junior Olympic swimmer. I was pegged. None of these things pan out, but like an Olympic hopeful, not like called that, but like I was somebody who things broke right, and I didn't get to be 6'3", but if things broke right, I had the path. I used to swim every summer. I'd go to University of Texas swim camp with the coach Reese, who was an Olympic coach, and like they kind of groom you along. And if your times kept hitting, you kind of whittle your way down to whatever.
Okay.
And one of the things that would determine that was this thing called age groups, which you would by region. So there was a New England region, there was a Southeast region, very much like college football when it actually meant the regions. And I was in the New England age group, which was all the New England states plus like regions of New York and some other parts. And they had a full meet. You'd enter like the Olympics, like 8 events, as many as you could, and you got points. I don't know, 10 for first place, like whatever. But it was very, very competitive. And there was one kid there who he was just better than everybody. I was not going to beat this kid overall. He got first in all 8. He was like the Michael Phelps of our age group. Never going to beat him. But there were a couple other kids who I was kind of neck and neck with for that second spot. And that second spot was basically, for me, I was a butterflyer. So like basically meant like I would get second in the 100 flies, like second in the events that he went in, and maybe steal a first in an event that he wasn't. But you needed the points to get up there. And if you got those points, you got invited to certain elite swimming camps. Again, swimming, like this isn't like AAU, like, going to like Peyton Manning's football camp or something. But in swimming, it was a big deal.
Yeah, for sure.
It would have meant I was like the second best 14-year-old in all of New England overall in these things. So they kept a point tally throughout the weekend. Swim meets are like long and boring. And this was at like, Brown University. So we're driving 3 hours to get there. And my parents, God bless them, like 4 hours, they're in the pool for 8 hours for me to swim 2 events. Like it's a long slog, especially as a parent now. Like it's a lot to ask. So we get into Sunday and I'm in fourth or fifth. And I have my least best event is the 500 freestyle, but I had to round something out with it. And for whatever reason, my coach put me in it. And essentially all I had to do was finish, because you got certain points. I had already made the early heats. I just had to finish the final heat for a top 6 or whatever it was. And I had enough points to put me in second place, and all these things happened. So I had an event before that in the morning, and then the evening or afternoon session, I had that. So I'm going through the whole day, and, I'm 14. There's girls there. You're meeting all the girls in the other team. You're talking. And at one point, I'm talking to these girls on another team, like over in like the warm-up pool, having a blast, feeling good. Like I'm going to get second in New England. And I hear the announcement, and it like to this day, like just chills like ran down my spine, like men's 13, 14, 500 freestyle, like on your blocks. And I'm so far from I'm like, what was that? And like, I look up, I look around, and I hear him like, on your marks. And like, I'm like literally like in the warm up pool still. And it's like, and I was like, wait, what the fuck? What just happened? So I like jump out of the pool. I'm like running over looking, and this is a big, it's a college pool. So it had 2 50-meter pools, one for what, like it was a huge facility. So I'm like racing down the deck, and I look over and I see the kids in the water, and like, no doubt at this point, like that's my heat. Like I was just flirting and goofing off, and I look around, and my coach is just screaming at me across, like he's on the other side because the coach is over there.
Yeah.
Apoplectic. And I'm looking up, and I'm watching these guys, and I look over, and my father and my mom are sitting where they were. I knew where they were. And my dad just has like the arms crossed, like jaw clenched, just staring me down. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I'm like, I almost wanted to like, I didn't want to cry, I don't think, but like, I just wanted to hide. Like I did the hands up, like, I know what to do. So I went in the locker room, and just like my upper teammates were like, dude, why aren't you in the water? Like, what happened? What were you doing? And I honestly, my only answer was like, I was just talking to these like pretty girls, like on this other team. Like I just lost, like I warmed up, and then I never got out because like they were talking to me,
Oh my gosh.
I finished, like, I didn't know what to do. I mean, that was it. It was the last event. And after that event, they did the tally. And then because I didn't enter it, instead of going from second, I went from fourth down to sixth. And I had to stand on the blocks, the sixth place block, with kids who I'd beat all week, except for that one kid. And the other, like 1 through 3 got medals, 4, 5, 6 got these stupid ribbons. And my dad's standing there and they take this picture. And I'm like, I wanted to just shrink into nothing.
Oh,
and I get out because I hadn't talked to my parents yet because the separation of the pool and the stands. And I finally finish and like we're leaving. And my dad just gives me that look of like, we did this whole weekend, like the whole season, in fact, like
yeah.
For you. The least you can do is do you just had to finish. You could have done backstroke. You could have done side stroke. You could have just like cannonballed through the water and not gotten disqualified and touched, and you would have got second and the camps and all the things you wanted. And I had nothing to say. Like,
yeah, there's no defense to that, right? Like,
and so that was what popped in my head of a time where like they had sacrificed, like, and I know now, like, especially my dad work and travel like 4 days in Providence, Rhode Island at a pool in the middle of the winter.
That's a
like,
lot.
It's a lot. And to not do my end of it, it wasn't effort. It wasn't like if I lost, he wouldn't have cared.
Yeah, of course not.
My hardest. I didn't even get in the damn pool.
Yeah. Oof, that's a tough one right there.
Yeah.
Well, Jon, dude, this has been a lot of fun, man. I appreciate you coming on. Plug everything. Plug whatever you want to plug. I know you have a new book that just came out, so plug whatever you got going on.
Yeah, just anything. My main thing that I always bring people to is my Books and Biceps newsletter, where I recommend a book every week and interview a lot of awesome authors, friends of mine, and people who I just meet through writing books, and a lot of like workout, meathead motivation. But that's at my website, Jon Finkel, JONFINKEL.com. And same Jon at JON_Finkel on Twitter. If you follow me on there, if you're on Twitter at all. And I have a book coming out. It's a book that I put out myself. It's not it's like I have an imprint called Meathead Media where I do these little books. And like I just had my big Macho Man biography come out, endorsed by John Cena and ESPN and all these things in April. And I went to WrestleMania. So in between these big books that take 2 years to put together and all that, I do these smaller projects just for myself, for my readers. And this one's called, as I mentioned earlier, Generation Griffey. And it's 90 essays about the 90 things from the 90s that made all of us legendary. I think you will all love it. So go buy that now because that's the new hot thing that I'm putting out. But other than that, just check everything else out. And I appreciate everybody listening. And for you having
for sure. Man, guys, make sure you check out Jon. Check out his website. Check out all his books he's got coming out. Check out Macho Man. Check out Generation Griffey. Follow him on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram at Michael Pasvar. Go to michaelpasvar.com for tour dates. When this episode comes out, the next show I'll be at is Abilene, Texas, October 26th, Saturday, 8:30 p.m. at Hef's Burger Bar. Let's pack that out. Last time I was in Abilene, we had a huge crowd. I know there's a decent amount of you listeners out there that live out in Abilene. So let's see you out there. Until next time, we'll see you guys next time. Bye now.